Hey guys, welcome back to the VHS Revolution show. I'm David Schumann. My friend Mike Klemak is back. We're reviewing Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I gotta say, our conversation is a little all over the place. There's a lot of spoilers about the new movie, so if you haven't seen the new movie, just wait till you've seen it and then come back and watch our review. So let's get to my conversation with Mike about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Okay, Mike Klemak is back. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Thanks for coming back.
My pleasure.
Let's get into it. Mike, what did you think of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning?
All in all, I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it more than Dead Reckoning.
Oh.
And I don't know if that's because it almost feels like it could have been one movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dead Reckoning was the lead up to a lot of the payoff that we get in this movie. So it's almost like you were left with just this cliffhanger of anticipation after Dead Reckoning finished. And so I think after I finished watching Dead Reckoning, I didn't feel satisfied by it.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it had an all-encompassing standalone tied up loose ends kind of feel. Whereas the other films do, even though when we got into the McQuarrie era, they all have this through line, they did feel like their own movies. Whereas Dead Reckoning, like I said, it had all this build up and then we had to wait all this time before, some things were explained, some things were resolved, and these characters start to make sense as to like why they were in this universe now and who they were becoming and what that led to. And so I think that's why I like it more. And it's not really being fair to Dead Reckoning because they probably intended it that way. And no one wants to watch a 6-hour Mission Impossible film. So
Right.
It couldn't have been one film. But I did like the idea that they were going to pull out all the stops for their final film. And they really did. It's not to say that the stunts were any more amazing because they're always amazing, or that the character development had more gravitas or, certain, which they did, certain storylines came to an end and other ones began. But it just felt like they were really, really going for their final reckoning.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I had a slightly more negative reaction to it. And by slightly, I mean a lot more negative.
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting there, I was wondering, I was like, is this worse than Mission Impossible 2?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's saying a lot coming from you.
I know. I don't, it's not. I wouldn't say I hated it. It felt like almost every choice to me was wrong. To make it like this, like cataclysmic world ending thing felt like we were tipping too far into like Fast 9 or Avengers Endgame, or like we're just, it to me was just like too far beyond what Mission Impossible is. And like, I know in 4 in Ghost Protocol, we had this missile that was gonna, destroy part of the United States that he stops at the last minute and everything like that. But
And in Fallout seemed to be pretty cataclysmic.
yeah, Fallout too.
Yeah.
I guess this just felt like so melodramatic, so heavy. You got the government and the president, about to push the button, and she's like sweating, and it's so heavy. It's so heavy. And I think that for me, it's just no fun. There were a few moments that I thought, okay, this is, it was more like intense than fun. And even in Dead Reckoning, which I agree is flawed, there were moments where I had fun with it. It's like serious, but whatever McQuarrie and Cruise were able to do with Fallout, it almost feels like Fallout was the peak of perfection of what they were able to do in terms of story and stunts. And then they kept pushing it with Dead Reckoning and the Final Reckoning, and they just kind of pushed it over a cliff.
And I'm curious if, because I saw it on such a big screen with such big sound, because I do agree with you bring up these points, like, yeah, it's trope laden and, you're getting browbeaten by, the melodramatic approach to it. But I'm wondering if, for me, because it was more spectacle because of the size of the IMAX screen and just that thumping sound, I was able to see past it a little more because I enjoyed these set pieces, which, you know, that's what a Mission Impossible movie is. It's like, basically, let's show you some cool shit. Let's show you cool locations. Let's show you, you know, Burj Khalifa, and let's show you, you know, submarines and all this stuff. And I think I just ignored all of the, you know, I separated the wheat from the chaff and like took from it what I liked, which was the spectacle of it. But I mean, that's also not what a movie should just be about. Like, yes, there are movies that are spectacle and they know what they're doing. But I think because Mission Impossible is trying to be more, it shouldn't just be spectacle. There should be, like, Christopher McQuarrie is a smart dude. He's a great writer and a great director. And I agree with you. I think Fallout was their pinnacle. And then all the rest is just fallout. You know, it's just like from that, they had nowhere else to go. So I'm glad that they wrapped it up because I don't think I could understand the logic behind doing this again.
Yeah, no, this feels like, and that's probably what they were thinking. They were thinking like, okay, if we're going to make a final one, let's have it be like the ultimate stakes. You know, the world is going to end from this AI entity going to launch all these missiles and destroy everything.
It also had this weird, not to get in the weeds too much about the plot, but it had this weird kind of Marvel-esque quality.
Yeah.
You know, when he went into what are you even going to call it? The pod that connects him to the AI, what Gabriel was using to discuss the AI. That just felt like superhero, like woo-woo, magical, like super-powered connection to, like, it didn't feel like a Mission Impossible movie, which as crazy as they get with their technology, always feels somewhat grounded in reality.
Yes.
But as soon as he was like being shown premonitions by the AI, and that's, you know, they're fearing that might change him. Like, you know, I think it's Paris who says like, it'll change you.
Yeah.
That just felt like it took like this huge left turn where you're like, whoa, okay, so wait, is he now like communicating with a computer?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, and that seemed to like come much more from these like big superhero movies that we get, where, you know, you're kind of asked to check your logic at the door because you're like, well, they're flying people with laser eyes. Like, okay, I there's a suspension of disbelief there.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned earlier, like, Mission Impossible has always been grounded in reality. They always take the time to explain, at least in somewhat layman's terms, how their cool little gadgets work, you know?
Yes.
They might not really beat you over the head with it, and you might just have to accept that they have these rubber masks that are like lifelike, but, you know, it shows a machine building that thing. And so they're like, this is how this team is doing this. This approach was just like, okay, we're in a whole other realm. We've left that genre behind now, and it's going into this weird hybrid mix of whatever it was.
Well, the characters say that the events of Dead Reckoning took place like 2 or 3 months prior to the final reckoning, but it feels like years.
Yeah.
Like, the world has literally changed. There are protests and there's this whole dark cloud like hanging over the world. And it feels like Avengers Endgame in a way, right? Yeah. Where Avengers Endgame takes place however long after the events of Infinity War, like 6 years later or something like that, where the world has clearly changed and is clearly different. And the entity is like taken over.
Yeah, and like Hunt is now watching his like debriefing on a VHS tape in an old, like in like a TV that you own that has like the VHS, and you're like, how long has it been where the world has had to revert back to analog? Yeah, because they fear that the AI can get a hold of anything that's technologically connected or networked, and like this world is now like adjusted, and if that's only a couple months, it's like, well, you guys move fast. Like, yeah. You know, and I couldn't believe that would happen as quickly as it did.
Totally. And the first, I got to say, honestly, like the first 45 minutes of the movie were a total mess to me. So much exposition. There were like 2, maybe 3 montages full of footage from the older movies. The first 2 or 3 or 4 scenes felt like it was like all close-ups of like Ethan watching this video. That was like the first scene. And then all of a sudden he's just in another location and Grace shows up. then they're like in another place where Luther is, and like I don't know what the fuck is happening with Luther. All of a sudden, Luther is like sick and dying
like
with
what?
no explanation.
What? When did that happen?
Right. And it's like the movie does all this exposition and all this like callbacks to the previous movies, but it doesn't bother to set up the new stakes. Maybe it does. Maybe in all of that Angela Bassett mumbo jumbo, your mission is VHS tape stuff. Maybe I missed it, but
also to play devil's advocate, I didn't mind how they approached the montage of bringing back the old footage. Mm-hmm. Remember in the newest Matrix movie, which is basically half of it is just old footage.
Yeah.
And you're beaten over the head with it. And it's like, no, if you're a fan of those movies, you're going to know what led up to here. You do not have to continue to show us these references of what happened before, because we know them.
Yeah.
This one, I think, did it just enough that it didn't feel like I was being browbeaten by it. Mm-hmm. But I do agree, like, suddenly Luther's sick. Like, what the fuck? When did that happen?
Yeah.
You know?
And why is he in this, like, underground bunker?
Yeah.
How does Gabriel know where he is? And it's just, it's all geographically, like, I was very lost for the first, half hour, 45 minutes.
Also, big spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it. And
yeah.
If you haven't seen it, you shouldn't be watching this anyway.
Yeah.
What the fuck is with making Shea Wingham's character Jim Phelps' son? That was so unnecessary.
Weird. So unnecessary.
Like you've brought back like William Donlow, which I actually enjoyed. I thought that was great.
I did enjoy that part.
I think that's a great bookend of the first movie and the last movie.
Yeah.
Great. Do something like that, and that is awesome. That plays to your fan base. It's done in a way that's classy, and you know, I had to remind my friend Chad and Daniel saw it last night. I had to remind Chad that one of the things that Kittredge says is after he interviews Donlow, he's like, "I want him manning a radio tower in Alaska by the end of the week."
Yeah,
and Chad's like, "I totally forgot about that."
Just mail him his clothes. Yeah,
yeah, just mail him his clothes. Great line.
Yeah.
And so bringing him back, and also the fact that he's like, no, thank you for what you did to me.
Yeah.
You don't have to apologize. That's great. So why the fuck do they make this like character suddenly who is a great standalone character? I like Shea Wingham. I like him as an actor, and I like that character. Why suddenly tie in this aspect that doesn't need to be there?
Doesn't need to be there. I completely agree. Doesn't need to be there at all. It doesn't really pay off in any real way. I mean, they shake hands at the end and Ethan cries, but like it's totally unnecessary. It's a totally unnecessary callback to the first movie. And then also like I kept looking at Shea Wingham thinking like, okay, Ethan says that his character was 7 when John Voight's Jim enters the IMF, and how old is Shea Wingham now? Like I kept trying to do the math because Shea Wingham looks like he's in his 50s. And Mission Impossible was 30 years ago, 29 years ago. So I don't know. But yeah, that was weird and unnecessary and felt kind of desperate.
Yeah. Also, the thought that I want to touch back on in line with the Luther thing, where suddenly a character is, sick or dying. The reverse was true when Palm Clementieff showed up and was like, wait, she's not dead either? Like, wait, how? Okay. There seemed to be catch up. Like there was like this gap missing, which they, through exposition say like months have passed. But in those months, like at least give us a little something. Yeah. Like you don't have to put it forward on a silver platter. You don't have to feed us the information.
Yeah.
But just give us some notes like, oh, okay, well, this happened and this happened. There you go. You're caught up. But instead, we're just left kind of reeling because there's so much happening and it's so frenetic. And then they're like, oh, and amongst this frenetic action sequence ball of fire being thrown at your face, also there's this expository character building, character connecting stuff happening. And you're like, holy shit, like pick a lane for a moment. Like I couldn't catch my breath because it was just like zip, 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 zip.
The other thing that had it not feel like a Mission Impossible movie was the lack of masks. There was one sequence where they had masks on and it was dispatched with so quickly that you barely even register that they had masks on. It's the scene where where Benji and Ethan are pretending to be cops escorting Paris. And the movie does so much with that scene, but not all of it makes sense. So if Paris was in the first movie, this is one of my big complaints. Paris was, I love Palm. I think she's great in that role. I think that character is so cool. Yeah. But the first movie, she's literally trying to mow them down, like destroy them multiple times. And the movie tries to justify her changing sides because Gabriel betrayed her at the end of Dead Reckoning. And then she saves Ethan and Grace when they're like falling off the train.
And Ethan also saves her. She said, "Why did you spare my life?"
Yeah, right. Ethan saves her in the alley fight. But I still felt like I needed in this movie some dialogue that said, like, I know you tried to kill us, but I see the best in you. Something.
Yeah.
Something. And in the same scene, they get Degas, Greg Tarzan Davis's character, to also basically just stop being a cop and join the IMF. But with all this speechifying about the IMF's oath, he doesn't even do the oath. So he's just there. He's not even part of the IMF. It's like just these little things I found so frustrating. These like very simple, obvious things that if you have them in the movie, at least make the first, 45 minutes make a little bit more sense, especially when you have all this stuff going on with this exposition with the entity and what's happening with the world. And if the entity does this, then this happens. And I found
it seemed like they rushed the parts they should have taken time with, and they slowed down the parts that they could have zipped past.
Yeah.
It seemed like they got their wires crossed there.
Yeah. I was thinking, and we can talk about this more when we do our rankings, but Fallout to me, if we're making a kind of a James Bond comparison, Fallout felt very much like Skyfall, right? Taking the material up a notch, giving it some heft and some emotional weight. But then Dead Reckoning felt like Spectre, where it had all the elements but didn't quite come together. And then the final Reckoning feels like No Time to Die, which takes, things to another kind of cataclysmic, apocalyptic level. No Time to Die is I think, better, but
yes. Yeah. It felt like it tied it up in a much cleaner way.
Yeah.
At least you didn't compare it to the Peter Sellers Casino Royale.
But I also think about the Lethal Weapon movies, like Lethal Weapon 1 has this great story mixed in with this great action. And then as the series goes along, the stunts and the action sequences become more important than the story and the characters. And by Lethal Weapon 4, it feels like it's just kind of a cartoon where it's like, how can we get them on the freeway? And how can we get them in this sequence, this situation and that situation? And in Mission Impossible, I know they've always come up with the stunts first and then tried to figure the story around the stunts. And in this case, it didn't really work for me. The two didn't quite connect. I think the submarine sequence on its own is cool. It did. My daughter thought it felt too long, and I kind of agreed. Like it felt almost like it could have been a finale, but it's kind of in the middle of the movie. And I think Tom Cruise's commitment to his craft is admirable and great. But I don't know, like so much of that sequence is showing the exterior of the submarine like rolling, and that's clearly CGI. Yeah. And then he's in this tank, that's meant to represent the inside of the submarine as it's rolling. And it's a very inventive, cool sequence as he's like being tossed around and these missiles are kind of falling on him and he has to like hold his breath and then go through the thing. But it also felt a little, I don't know if indulgent is the right word. It's something about it just felt like, okay, like let's move this along here,
I have a confession to make. So we had some some beers before seeing the movie,
Uh-huh.
hanging out. And to put this in perspective, when I went and saw Nixon in theaters, which was like a 3-hour movie,
Yeah.
I had to pee so bad I probably gave myself a bladder infection because I didn't go because I just
Uh-huh.
wanted to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Last night, same thing. I had to go to the bathroom so bad,
Yeah.
and we're an hour and a half into the movie, and I'm like, when should I do this? And the sequence that I did was he just left the submarine and
Oh.
was going down to the submarine on the ocean floor, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I pretty much know what's going to happen, and I like zipped out of the theater,
Yeah.
had the world's longest pee, and then came back
Yeah.
just as he's in the torpedo room. So
Yeah. So it didn't feel as long for you.
it didn't feel as long for me, but it also speaks to the fact that like I was willing to sacrifice 2.5 minutes of the film
Yeah.
for my own comfort. And
Yes.
thank God I did.
Yes.
But it just goes to show you, like, I wouldn't do that for any other movie. So there must be something there where I felt secure enough to know that, like, okay, I can predict that
Yeah.
this is going to go a certain way.
I thought that there were too many characters in Dead Reckoning, but the final Reckoning seems to almost double down on that and add even more characters to an already overstuffed movie. What did you think about all the new characters?
Well, they were smart in the fact that they populated those roles with good actors.
Yeah.
So that was a very smart move to do. But it also was a disservice to those actors because they're given like under 2 minutes of screen time each.
Mm-hmm.
And they're acting their hearts out. I mean, yeah, like Hannah Waddingham, great actress. I bet if you counted up her screen time, it's sub 2 minutes. Easy.
Yeah.
Why even have like these B plot, C plot, D plot, E plot subplots going on when you could have probably combined some of these characters, made like a solid subplot, and given them a bit more to chew on? Because yeah, it did start to feel like I had a bunch of those. Oh, it's that actor, it's that actor. That's great. And then they were gone.
Yeah.
And then you get them one more time in the final kind of montage where you get to see everyone's reaction to like, hey, they saved the day, and you get a shot of her, and you get a shot of the submarine captain, and blah, blah, blah. And so it felt like this rogues gallery of talent that was just like misused.
Yeah, the standouts for me were, as we said before, Rolf Saxon as William Donlow. He was great.
So good.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if we saw more of him in other movies going forward, because I honestly haven't seen him on screen since the first Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
And he's so great. And I love his relationship with his wife, and that little storyline was really perfect. And I also liked Trammell Tillman as Captain Bledsoe, the submarine captain.
Yeah.
He was really good. I don't think I've seen him before.
I actually have seen him on screen before, on the small screen. He was, I haven't watched the second season, but he was great in the first season of Severance. And he has this disconnection where there's more going on behind his eyes than he's willing to give you everything. Mm. And he brought that same quality to Captain Bledsoe.
Yeah.
And it was so good. It works so well because this guy's like, oh, you're on my submarine now, and we got to do this now. And
yeah.
You know, the way he delivered, like, you're on the wrong boat.
Yeah.
You know, like, it was just great.
Yeah.
It was awesome line delivery,
Yeah.
but he was definitely a standout for me.
And I'm not going to say, like, I don't love Simon Pegg. I think Simon Pegg is great as Benji. And I love Haley Atwell as an actress. I like her as Grace, even though her character feels really inconsistent over these two movies. Henry Czerny is great as Kittredge, although I really don't understand his character motivations.
Man, even at the end, where like Ethan Hunt has again saved the day and again saved the world, and yet it looks like you have this stick up your ass still. And it's like, at what point do you stop being like this like tight-fisted, by the book, white collar government guy, and you know, show a little bit more? Like it's like over 30 years, his character has not grown in any way. There's been like no character growth.
Yeah,
he's just a hard ass.
Yeah.
And I love Henry Czerny as well. He's a great actor. So it's like what he was given just didn't seem to suit what he deserved.
I would say the same for Isai Morales as Gabriel. I like Isa Morales. I thought Gabriel could have been a really cool villain, and I still don't understand anything about that character. Like, where did he come from? How did he find out about the entity? How did he decide that he was going to be the one to represent the entity and fulfill the entity's mission? How does he show up in all these different places? What is, like, they barely hint at this like past relationship with Ethan, that Gabriel killed Ethan's girlfriend, 40 years prior. They hint at that in Dead Reckoning. And then they basically repeat that exact same flashback in the final Reckoning.
Yeah.
And apparently that was part of a much bigger sequence that was to serve as the opening for Dead Reckoning. But test screenings showed that audiences just didn't care. And so they basically got rid of it. And that actress, Mariela Garriga, had a much bigger role, but she was basically cut down to like one shot. But she's mentioned in the opening credits for Dead Reckoning, not for the final Reckoning. But yeah, Gabriel, he's just kind of evil bad guy. And in the end sequence when he's flying his plane, which we'll get into, he just keeps like laughing maniacally. And
he's like an old like Western like twisting his mustache bad guy, and you're like, oh man, come on.
And I wish that they had made more of the connection between him and Ethan. It felt like that could have been a more substantial storyline, is maybe like these two guys who were part of the IMF and then Gabriel defected, and there could have been something more there with their characters, and feels like kind of both a missed opportunity and like kind of this like I just don't care. I don't care about Gabriel. And then the entity in the final Reckoning is just something they keep talking about. It's not really it's not really a presence in the final Reckoning like it is in Dead Reckoning, where the movie keeps cutting back to the entity on the submarine and we hear it taking over Benji's voice, and all those little ways in which it feels like a presence throughout Dead Reckoning. In the final Reckoning, they just keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. But I don't feel like, well, there's the blue. We get into the blue graphics where we go into it. But I don't know. I wanted to feel it more like Hal. Like I wanted it to feel like the villain of the movie, or like Ultron, to a degree.
Yeah, but like you said, there's a missed opportunity there for Isa Morales' character to be like, like a 006 in GoldenEye, like
exactly.
They've been in step for so long, but on diverging paths from where they first started, and it wasn't that.
Yeah, I would say that this movie, I thought that Rogue Nation had Tom Cruise's worst hair, but I think it's this movie.
And they even mention it.
His hair is atrocious in this movie.
Yes.
And it was so great in Dead Reckoning. It was just nice and short, cropped. Yeah. Here, it almost feels like a hairpiece. Like it's so goofy looking.
Did you notice on the plane scene when the air is hitting the top of his head, and he almost has like a Three Stooges Mo thing going on?
Yes, I did notice that.
You're just like, But yeah, there's a line in the movie about like, oh, your hair looks good long, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. No, his hair looks good long in 2 and Ghost Protocol, but here, and it makes him look old. Like he looks really old in this movie compared to all the other ones.
Yeah.
And yes, he's still very physically fit and he can run. Although at the beginning of the movie, when he's running across London to get to Luther, I kept thinking two things. Why is the city so empty? And why is he running? Why wouldn't he get in a car and give us like a cool, him speeding through the city sequence or something like that, instead of like him just running needlessly? There's so many sequences in the Final Reckoning where Cruise is running or somebody is running in a particular location and then they just end up in another location.
Yeah.
Like he's running on the streets of London and then he just ends up underground at Luther's underground bunker, or he's towards the end. The craziest one is he's chasing Gabriel in the Jeep. The Jeep crashes. He gets out and then he runs through the cave. And then in the very next shot, he's above ground
in an
running through a field.
Yeah.
And it's like I can like suspend my disbelief to a degree, but when you're talking Mission Impossible, though, like we said, those little details like matter to me. Like show him like running up some stairs and going through a door or something, at least to connect those two. Because otherwise, I'm kind of rambling on a little bit. Otherwise, the stunts feel like they're just stunts with very minimal, superfluous setup. Mm-hmm. And that's what the plane sequence felt like to me at the end. But before we get there, what did you think of all the mythologizing of Ethan and the IMF in this movie?
We've always known that Ethan, you know, he doesn't play by the rules, but he gets results. You know, like it's like the Dirty Harry kind of approach to your hero, while also kind of painting them with a bit of a, you know, you've already mentioned Lethal Weapon. Like it's these loose cannon guys. But Ethan Hunt has always felt like, yes, he's a loose cannon, but he's still doing IMF's work. He's still doing the job, and he's utilized as this like black ops, always, you know, whether he's been disavowed or whether he's been, you know, maybe disavowed, or it's, you know, just a ploy to bring out the bad guy. He's always working on the side of good. We know that he's the good guy, and also he's Tom Cruise, so we know that he's the good guy. It just seemed like in this movie, just like how they did the montages, they felt like they had to cement who Ethan Hunt was to the IMF and describe it to us. Mm-hmm. And they didn't need to do that. Yeah. We know who Ethan Hunt is. We've seen him over 8 movies. Like,
right.
Why?
Right.
Yeah. So it felt like a coda that was tacked on, maybe because either audiences didn't get the full impact of what it meant with it being like his final ride, or maybe they just felt like they had to pander to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. It felt like Luther had like 3 speeches throughout the movie where he talked about Ethan's destiny, and it almost feels like, you know, to go back to the Lethal Weapon reference, like if in Lethal Weapon 4, all of a sudden somebody's talking about Martin Riggs and this is his destiny and he's meant to save the world and everything like that. It just feels like weird. Like that's not what this series has been about. No. This series has not been about destiny and all this. I don't mind a little bit of philosophical weight or a little bit of added element to juice it up a little bit, but this felt like it was pushing too far.
Yeah, because he has saved the world multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's not his destiny to save the world. He's done it. You've fulfilled your destiny.
Yeah.
So is his destiny to save the world again?
Right.
Like, is that his destiny?
No, this time he's really saving the world.
Yeah. Guys, this time it's for real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This movie also has a lot of CGI shots of cities being destroyed or being annihilated, like in Armageddon or an Avengers movie, that just felt totally not in sync with the other movies. Like we said before, like the other movies, even Dead Reckoning to a degree feels grounded, and this movie just kind of tips it too far. How did you feel about splitting Ethan up from his team for most of the movie and having them have their story and having Ethan do his thing?
Well, they've done it before in Fallout when he has to chase after, you know, the big bad, and then Benji is left to like defuse a bomb. Mm-hmm. Like there's always been this sense of like the reason why the IMF team works well is because they have their strengths. You know, mm-hmm. Luther's the computer guy. You know, Benji's the like kind of computer guy, but also like the technical guy. And, mm-hmm. you know, now you have Haley Atwell's character is like the pickpocket, which is a bit of a tenuous thing that like her special skill as a pickpocket is the thing that's going to save the world. Yeah. But they've done it before, so it didn't feel weird. What it did feel like is as they're building this new IMF team, it felt like they could have had like a No Time to Die kind of thing, or a John Wick 4 kind of approach, where the reason why we're seeing Ethan split from his team mm-hmm. and them still succeed is because Ethan's going to die.
Yeah.
and he's no longer going to be the head of, like he says to Benji, you're team leader now.
Yeah.
And so I kept expecting it to be like, it's the final reckoning. It's, you know, it's like he's going to die.
Yeah.
And that it's going to be this swan song, and it's going to be, you know, it's been a great run. It's been 30 years. This is how we end it. And then at the end of the movie, he's still alive. And it's like, same old, like, you know?
It was actually really annoying that he survived, that he had this like secondary parachute that opens at the last minute, because that would have been the perfect send off. He's falling to earth. His parachute has burned, and he's doing this one last thing to save the world.
Yeah.
And that's it. Right. And then they could do some kind of like big ceremonial salute to him at the end of the movie, but no.
Or like him and Luther get like an IMF.
Exactly.
21 gun salute or whatever they do for that. But yeah, it felt like they were setting it all up to be this, like the next chapter of the Mission Impossible movies could be without Ethan Hunt or without Tom Cruise starring in the role. And then it felt like at the last second, they're like, no.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And like you said, that was such a great moment where like his parachute literally burns up and he's hurtling towards the earth. And if he has this hero moment, which he had like also in Fallout and in other ones where like, you know, it's the clock ticking down and gets to 1 second. It's that overused trope. But he manages to do it. And that's the last thing he does as an IMF agent. It's the last thing he does on Earth. It's the last thing he does to fulfill his destiny.
Yeah.
You know, that would have made more sense. And all of the mythologizing would have actually kind of been excusable, because you're like, oh, they were just foreshadowing that his destiny isn't to save the earth again. His destiny is to die.
Yeah.
Saving the earth. I think that would have been just like chef's kiss way to end it.
Yeah. Not to, this might sound like an odd comparison, but it kind of reminded me of the finale of Lost, in the way that Jack goes from becoming this like regular guy to like, it's his destiny to save the island, and he has to die in order for everybody else to live. And similarly, like the final season, and especially that finale, which actually just celebrated the finale celebrated its 15th anniversary yesterday or 2 days ago. That season and that episode goes overboard in mythologizing these characters and Jack and their destiny, and into this more like almost supernatural superhero type style. Yeah. And it just seemed like the perfect way to end the movie, and they didn't just have the conviction to let Ethan die.
And then you have them all in, I think it's back in London, and they're all having that, like, you know, it almost felt like a cheesy 80s action movie where some hair metal song should be playing as they all kind of look at each other and give each other the thumbs up of like, good job.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it felt like, you know, like him and Benji share. And obviously it's done better than that, but it just had this sense that it was like, look over here. And you.
Right.
Good, you know?
Yeah, it's
and then
all
they
these
all
singles.
kind of part ways.
All these singles, as if the actors were there like days apart. They weren't even like in the same shot together. We don't even get that satisfaction of having them like hug or, you know, thank each other. There's no like finality to it. And maybe that's what they wanted. They wanted Ethan Hunt to walk off and live another day to be able to save the world again. But so one aspect I want to talk about is the editing. So the editor is Eddie Hamilton. He's done all of the McQuarrie Mission Impossible movies. He also edited Top Gun Maverick. Great editor. I thought what he did on Mission Impossible Fallout was tremendous. And there's some really weird ass editing in this movie where they're cross-cutting between two dialogue sequences and then cross-cutting between two fight sequences that are happening at the same time. And it's like in one scene, somebody gets flipped and then it cuts to the other fight scene where somebody's getting flipped. And the same thing happens in these dialogue scenes where somebody asks a question, but then somebody in the other scene answers it. And it felt like they were trying to tighten the film by combining essentially like two scenes that on their own would have just been two separate scenes. Did you notice this, or am I just being wacky?
I don't think you're being wacky. I think you have an eye for editing, being an editor, more than I do. I think it was just a sense of that same thing where it felt disjointed and frenetic.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to put such a finger on like what it was. But I think it must be grounded in that same thing. Like whatever you saw is what I felt.
It did feel disjointed. That was my experience of it for the first 40 minutes until they really get out there. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is the final big stunt sequence with Tom on the planes. What did you think of that?
I remember thinking that there were a couple of shots where like the plane is upside down and there is no one in the plane and Tom's hanging on the side. And it's a wide enough shot that it's practical. Mm-hmm. And remember thinking, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah.
It felt like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
It felt like there was this tongue-in-cheek humor to at least the start of it, where the second guy is flying the plane behind. And it's like, you know, it's kind of like Back to the Future or like Indiana Jones, where like he pokes up from the side and then goes back. Yeah. And then, you know, it's like we've seen this in movies that are much funnier. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like when they do it in Indiana Jones, it's not like laugh out loud funny, but it's kind of this like quirky, like winking at the audience a little bit, like, yeah, we know you're having fun. We're having fun too.
Yeah.
But in this movie, that's not the vibe of it at all. Right. So he does that. And he gets onto the second plane, and, you know, again, there's like a little bit of this humor suddenly thrown in at like the 11th hour, where he's in the front cockpit and he's like, oh, there's nothing I need here. So now I need to go into the back cockpit in order to do that. And then there's this whole other part where we've already touched on, where he gets onto Esai Morales' plane. Yeah. And Esai Morales becomes like this caricature of a bad guy. Like, Ethan, you know, like, and you're just like, so the stunt was obviously impressive. Mm-hmm. You could tell that he's getting whipped by some fast wind. And he talks about it on multiple interviews where he found it hard to breathe, and he was like having to cover his head so he could create a pocket of air to like actually get oxygen and do all of this stuff. It just ends up like something where the stunt itself was obviously well executed and obviously death-defying, and everything we've come to expect from a Mission Impossible movie has this other layer painted on top of it. Mm-hmm. And like there's still cool sequences, like when the propeller is chewing up the tail of the plane. Like that's cool. That adds some urgency to the scene. And you know, the plane's falling apart, and the way that was tackled, where you can see the piece of the plane, you know. And then what was really cool is I'm like, well, what the heck does that mean? Obviously the planes fall apart. And when he grabs onto the second plane and the first plane just like disintegrates below him, was a really cool shot. Yeah, it was. So it's not without its merits. It still manages to create a really interesting sequence, but there's this whole other aspect to it, which seems unnecessary.
What's the aspect that seems unnecessary?
The comedic stuff I can excuse, but the like mustache twisting bad guy villain stuff that Esai Morales is doing, like you can't beat me. Yeah,
my problem with that is I didn't understand what was Gabriel's plan once he got in the plane.
The thing that's so weird is like he wants the device that Ethan has. Ethan wants the device that Gabriel has. Yeah. But Gabriel doesn't know what Ethan's plan is. Ethan knows what Gabriel's plan is. He knows the ends that Gabriel is trying to achieve. Yeah. But Gabriel doesn't know that if Ethan gets a hold of it, they have this whole convoluted multi-step plan that relies upon the reflexes of a pickpocket in order to succeed
Yeah.
in the works. So why is he just fleeing? Wouldn't he
Yes.
just want to, like, in the way that, you know, for all of its pitfalls, Mission Impossible 2, you know, DeGray Scott and Tom Cruise literally hurtle towards each other
Yes.
for a final battle. Why is Isai Morales flying away?
Right.
He wants the device that Ethan has, and
Yeah.
he just keeps saying, "I told you, it's coming to me." Like,
Yeah, and where is he going? Like he's literally, that's my problem with that whole stunt sequence is it's cool, but what's the point? Where is Gabriel going? Why is he trying to flee on a plane? And if there's 2 seats in the plane, why isn't he just going with his other henchmen in the same plane?
well,
Like, why do they need to take 2 different planes?
there's one line that tries to explain it. He's like, I got 2 analog plane, or like, I got an analog plane. I brought a second just in case. And you're like, just in case what?
Right.
What does that mean? Just in case the first one runs out of gas, but the other one's following you, so they have the same fuel level. Like,
it's this problem I have with some of the McQuarrie Mission Impossible movies, which is that these big stunts that get so much attention don't connect to the story in a way that makes sense or have like a really satisfying payoff. I'll get into this with Dead Reckoning, but so much attention was paid to this humongous cliff jump that Ethan does off this cliff on the motorcycle, and he falls to the earth, but then there's no payoff to it until later in the train sequence. He happens to crash through the window, but that doesn't pay off the reality of him actually jumping off this cliff. And I kind of felt that with the plane sequence. Like, wow, isn't it so cool that Tom Cruise can like literally be suspended in the air for like a brief second while he's he's on this part of the wing and then he's on that part of the wing and he's hanging by his legs and he's doing all this stuff. But what's the point of it?
yeah.
Right. And the setup of it is so flimsy that Ethan just happens to be running out of the cave right when Gabriel's plane is taking off. And it's like the execution of the stunt is great, but the setup and the payoff just leaves something to be desired still. I just want to say one other thing about that plane, the finale plane sequence, and the way you compared it to an Indiana Jones movie, which is that the way that Gabriel dies is very goofy Indiana Jones. He gets punched out of the plane and then he goes like balls first into the back wing of the plane, right? Yeah. And then smacks his head and like falls to his death.
Yeah.
Which
well,
is
also it's the comedic thing where after Ethan pulls the like safety harness.
Yeah.
And the plane's going upside down, he literally does one of these like, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like so goofy compared to like, you expect him to do this like Hans Gruber, like falling to his death, like, no, but instead he just like gets his balls chopped off. 2 things I wanted to show you that I got from the movie theater. One is this really cool homage to the first kind this poster that they were giving away, which I thought was a really kind of cool design. Yeah. And on the back is just, a kind of IMAX thing, but this homage to the first movie poster I thought was pretty cool. So I took one home.
It's interesting because that's obviously not the same image from the first poster. That's like him now, but that's really cool.
And then I don't know why I got this, but it just seemed super cool. It's this like popcorn holder, but it's also maybe like some kind of device that you open. Maybe it's meant to be like the submarine, and you open up the top and there's the keys and you have to put the keys together and then open the top to be able to put your popcorn in.
So you have your very own cruciform key popcorn holder.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is going to be worth something someday.
Yeah.
I'll put it up there with my other collectibles. The great thing about this series is, even though I kind of hate 2, there's stuff in it that's good and worthwhile. And I could see why people love 2. There are there are action fans who think 2 is the best of the series. And, you know, I think overall, if this is the final one, I think they've done a great job. And it's, you know, Fast and Furious started out as just kind of like a whatever action movie. And then through like 4, 5, 6, 7 got to be like really great. And then like went completely off the fucking rails. And to the point where like I just kind of lost interest, but I've never lost interest in Mission Impossible. And I think that's
for a 30-year run or 29-year run.
Yeah.
It's impressive that it's remained prescient and it's remained accessible and it's remained as something that people will still flock to the theater to go see.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, thanks so much for being here again. I love having you on. I'll see you next time.
Can't wait.
All right. See you, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, that was our review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and our ranking of all 8 movies. In the comments, let me know how you would rank the movies, or let me know what you think about the new Mission Impossible movie. We raised a lot of questions. We had a lot to say. Some of our opinions might be a little controversial. So let me know what you think. As always, thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.